In our series, A String of Pearls, DutchbuzZ contributors speak to people who have made an exceptional contribution to our local community. People whose passion for what they do have had an added value for the city of The Hague.
To mark our 10th anniversary year, DutchbuzZ is featuring people we've found to be pearls of the international community in The Hague. Today's pearl has been a regular guest in the DutchbuzZ studio. Canadian Cathy Delhanty is an empowerer of women, a feminist, activist, founder of a charity, a teacher, professional networker, and a knitter. More than anyone I know, Cathy Delhanty exudes warmth, and I believe it's no coincidence that her trademark project has the word warmth in it. Wool for Warmth is a charity founded by Cathy that uses leftover wool and volunteer knitters to make hats and scarves for homeless people. Cathy invited DutchbuzZ to tour their studio where I could admire the collection of donated wool and where she told me the very particular business philosophy at the root of the charity's success. It's not the first time this year that Cathy was bestowed with the title of Pearl. During International Women's Week, she was recognised as one of the Haagse Parels for her contribution to empowering women and girls in The Hague. But Cathy had to fight to get Wool for Warmth off the ground. I asked her how she went from being something of a thorn in the municipality's side to being one of its pearls.
We started with a donation of wool, and we needed to get hats and scarves that people had made to the homeless shelters. And this was much harder than we expected. We spent a year phoning shelters, phoning the city, saying, how can we get these handmade hats and scarves to the shelters? And it was no, give it to the Kringloop. Why don't you sell it? And no, these were not made to be sold. These were made to be given to homeless people. And finally, we just stormed one of the shelters, sat on the bench in the lobby, and annoyed the security guard and said, "We're not moving until we get a manager." So we talked to him, we talked to the lady who came out, and then finally we were put in front of the director. And he was just like, "Wow, this is exactly what we need."
What happened after that?
After that, we were shocked because the shelter gave us a donation of wool. Absolutely unexpected. And it was the same type of donation we get now. It was one of the ladies' mother had a bag of wool in the closet that she didn't use. Just leftover scraps and things you would throw away normally. And we took it and we made 25 items out of that. Sweaters, scarves, hats, and I think a pair of slippers. After that, we started to get known, and we were donated a wool store because another lady had died, and her family gave us her wool store. Changed everything.
Somehow, things come to you. It seems to me that you ask for things and they appear on your doorstep. And that's happened with wool, but it's also happened with volunteers.
Yes, we have to be careful what we think about because everything we think about happens. And, well, except with money. We're thinking hard about money, but that hasn't arrived yet. I always say yes to everything. And people say, no, you should say no, or you should be careful, and you should think. And I say, no, just say yes and figure it out on the go. So that's how we get everything. So people go, oh, I need this. Oh, give it to Cathy. She'll probably say yes. So I get a lot of things, but I get unbelievable coincidences. The couch you're sitting on is the example. We were lucky enough in the Corona time to be able to expand the charity, and we have a double space that we had before. And I stood here in this big room and thought, well, you know what we need a couch. And while I was saying that to the staff, like, yeah, we need a couch. I wonder where we'll get that. We don't have any money. I swear to God, a lady phoned, Jean, from the Irish lady here in The Hague, said, Cathy, do you need a couch? And I was like, yes, Jean, for the last 4 minutes, we've needed a couch. And then we got the couch. But then I looked at the couch and thought, well, it's actually really small in this big room. We should have maybe 3 couches in a U shape like we have now. And while I was saying that, 2 pictures of a couch were sent to my phone over Facebook, where someone said, I hear you might be needing 2 couches. I thought, yes. Yeah, exactly. We need 2 more couches. Now we have 3. Yep, it just comes.
It's like the fish and the loaves.
Exactly like that. That's how we feel with the wool, loaves and fishes. It's like no matter how much wool we knit, more comes.
I'd like to know more about your volunteers, actually, because Wool for Warmth is not just about producing as many woolly hats as possible. It's also, you're also injecting warmth into people's lives by creating a real community that comes together regularly, and they knit and they crochet, but they also share their stories. They share food. It's almost a spiritual experience. How do you find your volunteers? I know you've got 70 knitting clubs, and how fast has the community been growing?
We have 3 types of volunteers. We have people who knit and crochet. We have people who run their clubs, and then we have professional volunteers who run the charity. So these 3 types. The clubs came from this lady named Rita, a Dutch lady. She was 76 years old, said, "Hey, can I start some clubs?" And I said, "Yes," because that's what I say. And I went on vacation for 20 days, came back, she'd made 42 clubs. I was like, 20 days, Rita, what have you done? It's like 42 clubs. And she's like, "I think by Friday I'll be 50. And on Tuesday, she's like, 50. And then 60, 70. Oh my God, it's like amazing. So we use what's called the 3-lever model, where, well, we've made this model, where you have to have something insanely selfishly for yourself. The second lever is the action of knitting. And then the third one is for someone else, for the homeless in this case. So in all our cases, we have something selfishly for yourself. Maybe you're lonely. Maybe you're 80 and you love to knit, but you can't afford the wool, or your family are like, "Really, Grandma, that's enough," and you need someone to knit for. Then come and knit in one of our clubs. So they're in nursing homes and community centers, and here they're just all over the place. And so we made a rule that a club had to be 4 people, a minimum 4 people, because then we thought, well, it's not really a club if it's like 2 people. That's like a coffee. And so this rule of making 4 and something selfishly for yourself actually made the clubs go from 4 to 10 to 20 people, like that, because people said, "Oh, that's gezellig, I'd like to go have coffee there." Or Friday afternoon here, we have, for people who like wine, we have a breiborrel, come and drink some wine. It goes on really late.
So do the hats and scarves that come out of the wine clubs, are they different from the coffee clubs?
Well, we call it Friday Unwind, and we play on words, but we take tangled wool, and we sit here untangling it more than knitting. Anyway, so it meant that we ended up going from 70 clubs times 4 people to 70 clubs times 10 people to 70 clubs times 15 people, 20 people. So there was this astronomical growth. And then for the volunteers for the office, we mostly recruit from the foreign community. There are a lot of very talented, very educated, very experienced, very unemployed people in The Hague, especially women. I find a lot of foreign women, no matter how qualified they are unemployable here because people will not accept them.
Is that for language reasons, or because their degrees are not recognized, or?
Yeah, because they're foreign women, I think, is the fundamental underlying side of that. But you could write an unending list of reasons why they're not hired. So anyway, so they can come work with us, and in their chosen professional field, and we can always expand a part of the business to take their skill. Mm-hmm. For example, an HR lady and a policy lady have just recently got us a certification for our HR policies. And so they can say, "I didn't just volunteer, because sometimes that's also looked down on." Mm-hmm. They can say, "No, we went to Wool for Warmth and built the whole policy around the HR certification and received the certification."
Right, so you're empowering people, and you're giving them an opportunity to bring out their skills and to show their skills so that they can go on to paid work afterwards.
We try to use our network we don't try to find them work because we're not an employment agency, but we do put it out into our network that they're looking for work.
You've also been involved with Toastmasters, and that's another example of a way to empower others. Well, Toastmasters, first of all, is an organisation which helps people with their public speaking and networking and leadership skills. Do you think that helping people to find their self-confidence is a running theme in what drives you?
Well, I always think people don't look down on people. I think people get to where they are because of the choices they made or the circumstances they had. But I always think that everyone can actually do anything. I think people can actually do anything. anything they want, and they could just sometimes just need a little bit of guidance.
Is that not setting the bar very high when you say that?
Well, I think bars should be set way high. Everyone's always dumbing everybody down. Not around here. Around here, you do more, you do better, you do greater, and we go forward and up.
Last winter, we spoke to you on DutchbuzZ, and you'd produced 1,000 hand-knit hats and scarves for the Hague's homeless. This year has been plagued by the coronavirus. This studio right now should have been filled with the sound of clicking needles, but it's empty. How is it going to affect Wool for Warm's success this coming winter, and how do you think you might be able to move around the obstacle?
Well, one of the things about knitting is you can do it at home. And we did a calculation of the hours that our clubs do. And if you just took that, each knitter does 2 hours of knitting in a club each week, and you multiply it out, there's almost 10,000 hours of volunteer work each month that's produced, which is a staggering number. But now coronavirus has got two things. It's creating more homeless people, we expect, but it's put the knitters in their houses. So they're sitting there knitting for like 8 hours a day. So we're 2 hours a week, made 10,000 hours. We have people knitting like 40 hours a week at home.
But they're not knitting in clubs. It's not that the community is lost.
Well, the community's lost, but it will come back. And we can see the clubs starting to open, where they have a broad like a coffee table in between and a lady at each end of it. And only 10 knitters in a room. So 10 have to knit at home and 10 can come in. And they have to register they want to come. So we see that it's still going. But the volume of scarves and hats, since, when did I see you at Christmas? It was 1,000. We're way over 3,000 right now. And I haven't even gone around to pick up what people have been knitting during the coronavirus. There's one thing I haven't mentioned is we have a very challenging business philosophy, and it's something we've created ourselves. It's a new philosophy that everyone must be happy. And it's the everyone must be happy business philosophy. And it causes a lot of controversy because people say, that's not possible, or your head's in the clouds, your bar's too high. But it's something we're working very hard on, and it's that happiness. If we believe that everyone can be unhappy at a business, and everyone nods, oh yes, everyone can be unhappy, well then by definition everyone can be happy. So we allow the volunteers to adjust and change and move around to find the spot that makes them happy. So maybe they started in one role, it didn't suit them, or the hours weren't right, or I don't know, any number of reasons why it's not right. And we just say, well, then do this other thing. What kind of thing do you want to do? And it helps us with all the different cultures we have to deal with, because we have, 20 different cultures at any one time volunteering. And it sometimes clashes with the knitters, which are mostly Dutch.
So how do you deal with it when somebody can't find their happiness in Wool for Warm?
Yeah, and then maybe they should leave. And people say, oh, that's blunt. But if you're not happy here, then this isn't where you should be.
After the music, I asked Cathy about her own happiness and the challenges of living in the Netherlands. Please stay tuned to find out the 3 secret ingredients, according to Cathy, that make a strong and successful person.
It's DutchbuzZ's 10th anniversary this year, and we are celebrating our decade with a string of pearls as we honour those who have made a special contribution to the international community in The Hague.
In the first part of this interview, Cathy told us that Wool for Warmth, the charity she founded, is run on a clear and novel business philosophy, the rule that everyone must be happy. But Cathy has herself experienced a great deal of unhappiness in her life, and notably found it extremely hard to find her place when she moved to the Netherlands.
I found the Netherlands a very, very difficult place to come to. A lot of people are like, oh, we love it here, but I didn't love it here at the beginning, well, the first 3 quarters. And it came from partly because my outgoing personality was considered too brash. I had some trouble with my career when I got here. Being a manager in a telecom company, when I came to KPN, I transferred. But at this end, it wasn't welcome.
Sorry, what wasn't welcome?
Being a woman manager in a tech company. But it really was a difficult landing when we got here. But with Wool for Warmth, actually, this is the first time I've been able to do something that's made me feel welcome here. Both my children ended up being bullied at school because they were foreign. one in particular because she was foreign. So yeah, being an expat for me isn't the rosy story everyone likes to tells each other it is here.
And how do you think being an expat has sort of shaped you and the way you think, the way you feel about yourself?
Yeah, well, I never considered myself an expat because we moved here. We didn't move here with the intention of leaving. So when everyone's, oh, you're an expat, for me it was keeping us outside of the society that we had moved into. And so we put our kids in Dutch schools. Most of our friends were Dutch. But still, there was this even now, people call me an expat. And I've lived here for 20 years and never intended to leave.
What do you call yourself?
I call myself Canadian. But one thing I did feel here is that there's a lot of racism. And because I'm shiny white with blue eyes and blonde hair, a lot of the racist people that I met really thought I would be one of them. And so it's not that I experienced racism, it's that I was like, hey, you're with me against them. And I wasn't. And that's partly why we have every culture of the world here at Wolf for Warmth. The diversity is the fundamental basis of everything.
You have been an inspiration to many people. You've won awards for the stuff that you do, and a lot of people, everybody knows you, and a lot of people want to come and work with you. But which people have been influences for you?
The people who inspire me are not famous people. I think it's actually quite easy to become famous. Well, I've become well known, and that's for me a networking skill, a publicity skill, and something you can apply. But for me, the people who I admire are the ones who've been through adversity, or they've, the immigrant that's come to a country where they're not welcome, and they've done really well, even though they're speaking Dutch, and people are like, oh, you don't speak Dutch, and I'm speaking to you in Dutch. They've done all the things they need to do, or the refugees who've traveled across the world had to flee their country, and then they've just been able to keep going. They have this grit and determination, and I find that very inspiring.
Now, we've asked you to bring in a couple of, to bring in a book actually, and I know that you've brought in two, and they're both about two heroic figures, one of them real, the other fictional. They're both over 100 years old, so I'm very curious. These are both your favourite. Tell me a bit about them.
Okay, so there are two. One is the Scarlet Pimpernel. That's the adventure story. And I really love this idea. Actually, I can feel a bit like that. That's sort of this adventurer that you can do anything you want, and sometimes you mask it. I like the Scarlet Pimpernel. Looks like a British dandy, but he sneaks, aristocrats out of the French Revolution through guile and grit and determination and being really clever. For me, it's really important, this combination of clever and grit. And people often, which will bring me to the next book, when I lived in Australia, people thought, oh, you should be educated or have experience. And I always thought, wow, how much stronger would you be if you had education and experience, right? And also sometimes maybe adversity. Like my sister and I were abused by our parents. And that adversity makes you stronger. So then that brings me to the Autobiography of Benjamin Franklin.
Your second book.
Yes. Benjamin Franklin, he was an indentured servant to his brother. Mm-hmm. We know, his brother was a printer. And we know him as, the father of the American Confederation. And what I love about that book is that at the beginning, he writes it as a letter to his son, saying, here, let me just tell you about my life, as you should hear it from me. Mm-hmm. And part of it's lost, so they published what was found. But at the beginning, he has this list of things he wanted to remember to write about. And it's like, invented the post office, invented the fire department, negotiated world peace. There's this list. Created money, set up the printing press, set up the newspaper.
Cathy, have you brought along a photograph?
I always get emotional with this. My husband and I dancing at our wedding. Listen to me. We just had our 33rd anniversary. And I'm all emotional seeing my wedding.
Oh, congratulations. Tell me a little bit about your husband. How did you meet?
We met in a bar at university, drinking.
In which country?
In Canada. He was in Canada doing his PhD. So he was at university, and I was an undergraduate, and he was 23 and I was 19. And we met in this bar, but I also met that night. I met the best man of our wedding and one of the groomsmen. It was like the instant wedding. It was not my intention at 19 years old to be getting married. But
How long after your meeting did you get married?
almost 3 years. So in this picture, I'm just 22.
And he's followed you all over the world, to Australia first, I guess, and then to the Netherlands.
Well, we follow each other. So we went to Australia for his job. He's a research scientist. Mm-hmm. We were in Canada, so we went to Australia for 2 years and stayed for 10. But with his career leading, but then I developed my own career in Australia in telecommunications. And then I joined KPN, the Dutch phone company in Australia, and then we came here for my job. Our whole adult lives we've been together.
You have 2 children together?
Yes, we have 2 children. We had the kids after we were married 12 years. Yeah, and they're both at university right now.
It's a beautiful picture. It's got a lot of emotion in it. 33 years later, still going strong. Would you say you and your husband have been the biggest influences in each other's lives?
Yeah, very much, very much. And we grew up together as adults, and so all of the adventures that we had around the world, we did together. And
including struggling to settle in the Netherlands?
Yeah, very much. It was hard for him because he left his career in Australia to come here. He's fine now. He's at Erasmus Medical Centre. But there was this moment of doubt where the day I arrived in the Netherlands, they said, you don't have a job here. So we actually were both of us unemployed. And then KPN realised I was on maternity leave, and maybe they were really quickly get me a job.
The final item, Cathy, that I asked you to bring along was something from your bedside table.
Yes. Do you know what it is?
I can see a dream catcher.
Yes.
Tell me about it.
So it's not just a dream catcher, it's a real dream catcher made by a First Nations woman in Canada. And her name is Phyllis, and she's a medicine woman, so a spiritualist. And she actually made this. So these are real eagle's feathers, which as a white person in Canada I'm not allowed to collect. But as a Native American, she is. So it's made with doe skin suede and real eagle's feathers. And as you can see, it doesn't look like the commercial ones that are all full of, fancy things. It's much more basic.
It doesn't have the sort of cobweb effect that you sometimes have.
They do have some like that, but this one doesn't have the cobweb effect in the middle. It's got a cross of beads in the middle. Yeah.
So it's on your bedside table, and
it hangs above my bed because it's a dream catcher, so it has to hang in the light of the morning sun. And one thing that I learned from knowing Phyllis and her family is that they work both ways. Did you know that? So say dream catchers keep the bad spirits from you, but if you're a bad person, they fire them at you, which I didn't realize because the way I know Phyllis and them is I was in Canada dealing with what we call my step witch, which is the name for my stepmother, and in fact Phyllis named her step witch. And when we were finishing off the abuse with it, and I was able to stand up and push her away, my stepmother, this very small group of family of Native Americans took me in and helped me and supported me. So you see my finger, I have a ring as well from their band. And yeah, so when they found out my father died, the people really just instantly, generously gave me gifts and in honor of my father, and I just met them. It was really lovely.
How old were you then?
It was 5 years ago. Because child abuse doesn't end when you are 18. Child abuse ends when either you end it or your family dies. But that's when I met Phyllis.
You say you're not religious, you don't believe in God, but you believe in the dream catcher.
Well, I don't believe in the dream catcher. I believe that Phyllis believes in the dream catcher. I'm really very much, the individual can have their own beliefs. So, like you asked earlier with coincidence, I have like huge numbers of coincidences constantly.
I mean, some people call it the universe. Does that work?
Well, I don't know. But I really do believe that the individual is very much responsible for their own actions, good and bad. And I think if you are trying to be good, eventually it comes around, and that's because people can then count on you being a certain way, and so you're attracting what you've been sowing.
It does tend to happen to you. I mean, I spoke to you last week, and you told me you were going out to pick up boxes of grandmother's wedding crockery.
Yes.
Tell me more about that.
Well, here's some here on the table. A lot of people's grandmother's wedding presents are being disposed of. and quite cheaply or free. And I would go around picking up people's grandma's wedding china, and we use it here for the volunteers. So everyone gets to use very fancy cutlery, silver-plated. We're drinking off bone china, and I got some crystal vases. So we try to make the atmosphere as nice as we can, but it's just rescuing these things from the tip.
Cathy, we could go on. You go out there, you see the opportunities, you grab them, and you give them your all. You really go for them. I don't think it's a coincidence. Thank you ever so much for talking to me again and letting us a little bit more into your world.
Yes, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Guile and grit and determination drive the heroes of her two favourite books. Add adversity and you have her top ingredients to become a powerful, inspirational figure who can help others. Cathy Delhanty is the founder of Wool for Warmth, a charity that brings together communities of volunteers to knit for homeless people in The Hague. Today she was one of DutchbuzZ's pearls, and it was an absolute delight to listen to some of her wisdom. I'm Ayesha de Sousa.
DutchbuzZ, your weekly dose of inspiration from some of the city's special people.